Welcome back to Strayatrains. With the introduction of the high-capacity metro train onto the network, the Comeng train is the most reliable train on the network is coming to a slow but eventual end. It is crazy to see how within weeks of its final service, a Comeng can go from looking like this, all the way to looking like this. In this video, we are going to talk about the process of a next Newport Workshops Comeng transfer, sometimes a Comenger's last hurrah around the network. A harsh reality, no doubt. Hope you enjoy the video.
This is a service to
Strayatrains.
stopping all stations direct to
Strayatrains. So let's start off with the procedures leading up to the eventual transfer, and that is once the Comeng has ran its final service, it will be transferred at some point as an empty car transfer to Newport sidings and generally is stored in one of the roads closest to the Williamstown line. I'm not sure the numbering, but that's where it is stored, and it is generally on the North Williamstown side of the sidings. Now, the closest I've ever gotten to an empty car transfer for retirement is this one right here. I caught it by surprise, so sorry about the very bad footage. And just to be clear, if there is another type of fleet in that exact same spot, that does not mean that that train is going to get retired, such as if it was a Siemens. It would mean that it's probably just being stored there for stabling purposes. After a little while, the retired Comeng gets moved to a different road. I believe it's the fifth closest road to the Williamstown line, but I think it's the closest one that has no electrification on it. That is where they do works on the Comeng in preparation for its transfer. This includes taking specific parts off, such as the horns, and they also tend to cover the Metro and PTV logos with blue stickers, which is a great way to tell if the Comeng is ready for a transfer or not. If you can still see the Metro and PTV logos on any of the carriages, then you know that a transfer is not happening just yet. Also, the works they do on the train is enough to pretty much make it undrivable. Now let's head to the actual day of when a transfer happens, and it begins with a light engine loco movement all the way from South Dynon to Newport Workshops. Once the locos have reached Newport Workshops, a little bit needs to be done just before the actual movement can occur. One of the most important things is to couple up the trains with a transition coupler. Here is a close-up of the coupler. To make things easier to reference where we are throughout the video for specific parts of the transfer, wherever the Strayatrains logo is where we will be, starting off here at Newport Station. Once the crew's ready and the clear track ahead signal's been given, the transfer departs Newport Workshops and passes Newport Station Platform 1, before junctioning off right afterwards on the up end to the Brooklyn goods line. Now, if you do want to see the transfer, Newport Station is a great place to be because it is a surefire that you will see the transfer. Wherever it is going, it will pass Newport Station, so it is definitely a safe bet if you're not sure where it's going. However, the one downside is you generally want to be on the platform 2 side to get a better view of the whole transfer. However, because there's 3 trains that pass every 20 minutes, it's very possible that you could get spark blocked. Also, they tend to, from what I've noticed, start the transfer right before the down train is coming, so there is a high risk that you could get spark blocked. However, if you do want to see it, is definitely a great place to view the transfer. It is also important to take notice, and this actually applies for across the network, service trains always take precedence over these type of movements, so if there is delays or for whatever reason there isn't a path, the transfer will be held up until a path is given, as they don't want to delay services unnecessarily. This is also one of the reasons why transfers tend to run a little bit late. Saying that, you never really know when transfers are going to leave, so I do highly recommend if you do want to see a Comeng transfer, get there way before it is expected to pass wherever you're viewing it from. Let's head to the next phase of the transfer, which is the Newport Sunshine goods line. A great place to be if you are waiting because it is a very nice nature strip along the line, and also there is generally some loco movements around, so it definitely keeps you busy whilst you're waiting for the transfer. Sometimes known as the Brooklyn goods line, this track allows for both broad gauge and standard gauge trains to run direct from Newport to Sunshine/Tottenham Yard. Initially, for the early Comeng transfers such as the North Shore ones, they did not use this line, which made the process a little longer. Now it is pretty much also a safe place to be if you're not sure where the transfer is going. There are lots of great locations to film along the line, but it's also a cool place to be as you don't typically see electric trains here because there is no electrification. Whether you like the nature strip, level crossings or track curves, I'm sure you'll find a place somewhere along the line. You may notice a fork in the Newport Sunshine goods line And that is because things now get a little interesting depending on where the Comeng is destined for. If it is heading for temporary storage to Tottenham Yard, it will take the right hand side, which we'll take a look at later in the video. However, now let's take a look if it's heading to the left hand side, which is for scrapping. Once the track clear head signal has been given, as this is another point of waiting, the transfer will head to Sunshine Station Platform 4 and then past Albion Station Platform 2. If it's going to McIntyre, it will junction off on the down end at Albion, which we'll check out a bit later on in the video. But if it's going to North Bendigo Workshops, it will continue down the Sunbury line all the way to the Bendigo line direction. And it will actually, though, stop at Castlemaine to let both the up and down velocity services pass by. This is because the track isn't fully duplicated all the way to Castlemaine. And also, I believe the speed restriction is roughly 60 to 80 kilometers for these transfers, whereas the velocities can travel up to 160 kilometers an hour. As service trains take precedence, this is the reason why the transfer will actually get held up at Castlemaine to allow for the services to pass by. Which means that if you do view the transfer in the Metro Melbourne area, you can actually PTV to either Footscray or Sunshine Station and take the next down service if you want to view it again, because you will overtake the transfer at Castlemaine Station. So if you do want to see it multiple times, that is definitely a way to do it. Just go to Footscray or Sunshine and catch the next Bendigo bound service. This is definitely a chase I highly recommend doing. It is a very fun chase. Anyway, here we are finally at the first of 3 destinations that we're going to look at in this video, North Bendigo Workshops. And if you are thinking of coming to North Bendigo Workshops and you want to see it on the Bendigo line, it's going to be very hard to do without a car, so I definitely recommend driving if you want to see both. Another benefit of going to the workshops, if you do want to see the transfer for a long time, a fair bit of shunting does take place, so it is definitely a good place to see if you want to see that, as we see 394 Emmett Trail into North Bendigo Workshops. So here it is entering the yard, and the shunting process is fairly slow only because of the very slow speed restrictions in the yards. But as a result, you get to see it for a long time, which is quite a bonus. See lots of movement and feel like you're almost in the yard. Of course, there is a fence in the way, but it's a very cool feeling. And this is then preparing the train to put into the road, where they will start stripping it and effectively preparing it to eventually be scrapped for good and nothing but history. And now let's take a look at our second destination for a Comeng transfer, being the McConnell Dowell Rail Plant in Sunshine North. This is where the train junctions off on the down end of Albion Station from the Sunbury line, that is, and takes the McIntyre loop to the rail plant. Another great place to see a Comeng transfer, because you wouldn't typically see a Comeng on the McIntyre loop because there's no electrification, so a very cool spot nonetheless. Where I am right now is probably about 250 meters or so away from the yard, so a very nice place here at the crossing to see it. Anyway, another bonus about the McConnell Dowell Rail Plant is you can actually see what they've done in terms of their preparation for the eventual scrapping of these carriages. Let's take a quick break and look at what a stripped Comeng starts to look like. And now let's head to the final of our 3 destinations we're going to look at, and that is Tottenham Yard, where the Comeng are placed for temporary storage. The locomotives push the train or pull it, depending on how the consist is on the day, to roughly in line with Tottenham Station. Then they detach themselves from the Comeng, bypass it on the track slightly closer to the Comeng, and then get ready to push the train into the yard. It is kind of annoying with the wagons and whatnot in the way. That definitely is a downside of Tottenham Station, but unfortunately not much we can do about that. And then they, of course, couple themselves back to the Comeng and get ready to push it into the yard. as we see right here. It again is a little far away. Keep in mind I am zoomed in, so that is also another downside. So Tottenham Station probably isn't the best place to go, but if you do want to see this part of the process, I guess there's not much you can do about it, unfortunately. Now at Tottenham Yard, the final checks and whatnot are being done. I'm not sure exactly what is done, but they do some works and checks before they actually complete the process and leave the Comeng there for good, or at least for temporary purposes. Once that's done, the ending of the transfer begins, and that is, of course, the locomotive light engine movement back to South Dining Yards as we see the P classes move by there. And here is Tottenham Yard. This is before a lot of the graffiti was done on the Comeng, so here they look relatively clean. But if you do go past now, you'll see a lot of graffiti on them, which is definitely quite sad to see. And that concludes the video. Whilst this process is a tough one to swallow, the greatest train Victoria has ever seen has fallen victim to the undefeated Father Time. This process is the last chance we will have to view, film and appreciate these Comeng sheds by giving them the farewell they deserve. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have enjoyed the video and learned a thing or two, and we'll leave it at that. Cheers.